Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Committee of the Whole, January 17th. And I will call the meeting to order and start with our land acknowledgement. We're pleased to be here today on the traditional territory of Treaty 6. We acknowledge all those who share a deep connection with this land. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all of Canada's First Peoples, whether they be of First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. As we gather here in the traditional Treaty 6 territory, we acknowledge that we are all treaty people and have ongoing responsibilities to protect and honor all of life. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Would a member of the committee like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Here we go. Councillor Miller.
Sure. I move that the January 17th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And now would members of the committee please vote? And declare the vote. And that's all in favor. Thank you very much. Moving right on to the adoption of the minutes. And I have different items on my screen here, so I'll not use that. The adoption of the minutes, the Committee of the Whole meeting from December the 20th, and they were sent out. Is there a member of the committee willing to make a motion to approve those minutes as they've been presented? Mayor Daniluk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the December 20, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes be adopted as presented. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now would members of the committee please vote on the minutes as presented? And everyone has voted. Stop the vote and declare the vote is passed unanimously. And I should mention as well at the beginning here that Councillor Munkoff-Swain is on vacation, so he won't be joining us tonight. Okay, now moving on then to our one and only presentation for this evening is Madam Bujaya, Madam Clerk. Would you like to present on the review of the Beaumont Council Committee's project? There you go.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm very pleased to bring this presentation to the Committee of the Whole. I do feel a little bit of pressure being the only game in town today, so I'm going to do my best to make this.
Doesn't mean you have to take too much time. You could just,
I will be brief and thorough. That is my objective. So I'm Sandy Bajaya, and I'm the Director of Legal and Legislative Services. And as I said, I'm very pleased to bring this presentation to you. The report before you in the agenda includes a lot of reference information on a number of matters related to council committees, but this presentation will really just focus on the review process itself while highlighting some of the objectives and expected outcomes. So this won't be our first and last session on this matter. This slide provides an overview of the topics included in the presentation. So we'll just start by taking a look at the phases for this work and the expected deliverables for each phase. I'll touch on the legal requirements for council committees next. Following that, I'll highlight some of the issues to be navigated as we ensure that we are utilizing our council committees effectively. Then I'll talk about the approach to councils, boards, and committees bylaw, which is a foundational piece of this project. And then I'll end with a brief recap of expected deliverables before turning it over to the committee for questions and comments. So hopefully that sounds like fun.
loads of fun. Thank you.
That was implied.
So this is a fairly ambitious project with a number of phases. The phases are represented chronologically here, but in reality, there will be overlap between the phases. And the process is likely to be iterative rather than strictly linear, but that's okay. The first phase will be developing a boards and committees bylaw, which will set the foundation and the parameters for all of council committees. I'll go into a bit more detail about the bylaw a little later in the presentation. The second phase is a comprehensive review of all our current processes and practices related to council committees. So this would include things like how we recruit members of the public, the appointment process, orientation of committee members and the committees themselves, reporting to council, how that's facilitated, and the ongoing support that we provide as administration to our council committees. So we'll need to look at all of those factors in that second phase. The idea, of course, being that we'll come up with a list of process improvements that will be shared with council and hopefully approved, and then we'll be looking at implementing that. The third phase is a comprehensive review of all the current council committees, as well as all the external committees, commissions, boards to which council appoints elected officials to. The intention of that phase is to ensure that as a council, we have the right council committees internally, and to ensure that appointments are reflected, appointments to external bodies reflect council's priorities and strategic needs. The final phase is really about implementing the identified process improvements and developing any of the required bylaws or other supporting documents. So it's putting into action what we discover through the previous phases. So this slide provides the legal requirements for council committees. It's important to remember that a council committee is a defined term in the Municipal Government Act. It literally means a committee, board, or other body established by council under the MGA, but does not include the Assessment Review Board, which we call ARB, or the Subdivision Development Appeal Board, SDAB. Both the ARB and SDAB have their own unique provisions in subsequent sections of the MGA. That's why they're not included, and they're sort of separate and apart from council committees. While a council must establish an ARB and an SDAB or enter into a regional SDAB ARB, there is no requirement, no legal requirement whatsoever to establish council committees. So it's important to put that out there. But if a council wishes to establish a council committee, then it must do so by bylaw. Council committee meetings generally have the same requirements as council meetings, so things that this body would be very familiar with. This means that meetings and agendas must be advertised. Notice of meetings must be provided to the committee members and the public within certain timeframes. Meetings are open to the public, except when matters are protected by the provisions in the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Just as with council meetings, that doesn't mean that members of the public can drop in and participate, but they can certainly observe and attend those meetings. Typically, a council committee is a type of an advisory body when we think about it. It provides advice to council. But in some instances, a council may delegate certain decisions to a council committee, and that would be set out in the committee's bylaw. That said, the delegation needs to be exercised with caution, since there are certain things that council cannot delegate to any other person or body. So that's things like the adoption of the budget, the power to pass bylaws generally, the ability to cancel, reduce, or refund property taxes, and the power to appoint a CAO. So there are some duties of council that cannot be delegated to council committees. Okay. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time just talking about some of the pitfalls and some of the things that we should think about when we want to maximize the value we get from our council committees. Establishing and maintaining council committees requires a significant amount of municipal resources. So if you think, for example, about the hosting, facilities, and recruitment costs just at a bare minimum. More importantly, council committees require considerable time from councillors as well as administration. As all of you know firsthand, councillors are usually appointed to quite a few council committees as well as external bodies. And these obligations are over and above all of the responsibilities and duties you have as a member of council, a member of committee of the whole, and just as a representative of the community. Likewise, administration must address all the supports, things like agenda management, report preparation, guest speakers, communications, bookings, et cetera, that the committee requires to be successful. So administration provides the kind of support that we provide to council, to our council committees as well. Administration also provides subject matter expertise and assists the committee in reporting back to council. In terms of value, a council committee's mandate should complement the expertise provided by administration and help to further support council reach its strategic priorities. However, there may be times when council committees have mandates or tasks that duplicate administrative responsibilities, and this can lead to issues of role clarity, and frustration for committees themselves, as well as council and administration. So that's something we'd want to avoid. Council committees can be a really important type of public engagement and can offer an opportunity to harness the expertise and diversity in the community. That's one of the things that we really value about our council committees. Further, they're also a way that council can engage members of the public on local government issues, and that speaks directly to council's strategic plan. That said, there's always the risk that just needs to be mitigated of assuming that a council committee's view on a particular topic is complete or represents the entire community. So depending on the issue or topic, we have to consider the range of public engagement activities that would be appropriate for that matter. So council committees might certainly be a tool in that resource, but not the only tool. Okay. So turning now to the first phase of the review, I'll go into a little more detail on the boards and committees bylaw. So council members will recall that the refresh of the council meeting procedures bylaw last year included the removal of the matters that dealt with boards and committees with the intention of creating a standalone bylaw. What was in the previous procedures bylaw was very scant, so not particularly helpful for our purposes. What this slide does is it highlights the topics and matters that would be typically part of a boards and committees bylaw. So what you will expect to see when the draft bylaw comes to you. So the kinds of things we would see are the types of council committees that may be established, including the purpose for each type. So we might differentiate between ongoing advisory bodies versus more of a task force idea, a committee that's struck for a shorter duration with a very sort of focused mandate. Details around membership, meetings, procedures, and general expectations for the committee. This is really valuable to the committees themselves because they often want to understand what their expectations are. So we would talk about notice, subcommittees, agendas, minutes, all those sorts of nuts and bolts. The third thing is the respective roles and responsibilities of councillor appointees, committee members, and administration. So each of those parties has an important role to play. So it's a great opportunity to clarify what are those roles and expectations. We would have the reporting requirements for council committees. Some committees report frequently, some less frequently, depending on their mandate. But it is helpful for a committee to know that at a minimum, they're expected to report, for example, once per year, twice per year, whatever that right reporting frequency is. And then the final thing that we would include in a boards and committees bylaw is a code of conduct for members of council committees. So as we're all aware, council has a code of conduct bylaw. Committee members are not obligated to abide by that code of conduct bylaw. That's an obligation that council puts on itself. Council could make that bylaw an obligation for council committee members, but when that bylaw was contemplated, that wasn't part of the plan. So what a lot of municipalities have done is they have a slimmer, kind of more user-friendly code of conduct that just sort of gives you the highlights, and then everybody knows the rules of engagement. So that's the idea there. Okay, so hopefully having a sound bylaw will provide a solid foundation for this project and the subsequent phases of review, and be helpful to our future council committees as well as our council and administration. Committee of the Whole can expect to see a draft of the bylaw this quarter prior to the bylaw being presented to council for potential readings. So that means Committee of the Whole will have a chance to really digest the bylaw and have input and make sure that everyone is comfortable with what we put in the bylaw. So we're getting close to the end. As promised, I'm trying to be very brief. So I'm just going to do a quick recap of the deliverables, so you're as excited about this project as I am. There are a number of facets to this review project, but the key deliverables are, first and foremost, having the right legislative framework in place, bylaws, policies, process, cleaning that up and making sure we have that right structure in place. Second is ensuring that there's a balance between the investment of municipal resources and the value received from council committees. So I think we have some great opportunities to improve that value and sort of think about how we're investing those resources. Third is meeting the needs of council and supporting council in achieving its strategic goals. The whole purpose for having a council committee is to support council and to help council. So we want to make sure that that's exactly what we're doing. And the fourth is enhancing the experience of the committees themselves. These bodies are made up of dedicated volunteers who freely share their expertise, experience, knowledge, and time with the community. So we want to ensure that our committees feel heard, they understand what's expected of them, and that they're engaged. So the hope is to also enhance their experience. That concludes the overview of this project, and I'm very happy to turn things back over to our chair for any questions and comments from the committee.
Thank you very much. That was a very succinct and well-stated presentation. I do appreciate the logical way that it's laid out. And if we don't review these things on a regular basis, then that's not a good thing. So I really do appreciate that. Councillor Tessier has a question or comment.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the presentation. Well done as always. Does this cover all the committees, like including like the grants committee or art steering committee, like every committee that we have in our city, right? So is there going to be, I guess, a different expectation or different rules, say if you receive funding compared to if you don't receive funding? Like the RCMP committee is just a committee that gets together and talk about the community, things like that, but they don't actually receive budgetary funds from the city, where other committees sometimes receive funds. Is there going to be a difference in this bylaw and how that looks?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Tessier, through the chair to you. So we have to be a little bit careful because there's two types of committees. There's the what I call internal ones, so the ones that council creates by way of bylaw. So the grants committee is a good example of that. And then there are external bodies to which we make appointments. So the RCMP is not our committee. That's an external entity. Council can only kind of dictate the rules for the committees it creates, but we will be looking at the external appointments to make sure that we are happy with the bodies to which we are making external appointments. And that process may be, a simple process. Yes, this is what this committee does. It makes sense that we're appointing someone a member of council to that committee, check in the box, great. In terms of, are we going to have different rules for different committees? Every committee should have its own bylaw. So council can dictate what the expectations are for each committee on a case-by-case basis. There are some rules that apply across the board, and those would be in the boards and committees overarching bylaw. So there are a few moving pieces. There's the overarching rules for our council committees, the individual bylaw for the committee that gets into the nuts and bolts of that individual committee. And then there's the external entities that we have to play by their rules, but we also have the option. We ultimately decide, do we appoint a member of council or not to those bodies?
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, thank you for that explanation.
Further?
No, that's it for me for now, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you. Quite a process and a lot of work to go through to get through this. So I look forward to being involved and seeing the steps along the way. Is it anticipated that there will be a review of internal resources alongside this? Can council expect an ask for more support or additional resources or something, perhaps in a 2024 budget process, or is it too early to tell that? Thank you.
Madam Chair, through you to Councillor Van Newkirk, thank you for that question. It is a little early on in the process to know for sure. I have started a lot of this work, and even at this stage, I think it would be fair to say that there are some internal processes that need to be beefed up. So there could be some budgetary adjustments that we need to make. I don't anticipate it would be significant. And I think there may be some potential savings as well. For example, if we look at a couple committees that have similar mandates, is there an opportunity to amalgamate those committees, expand the mandate? So that would reduce the number of committees. So we might be able to offset some of the costs depending on the decisions we make. Ultimately, the recommendations will be coming to council for approval and for consideration. That is a conversation we'll continue to have. And of course, we always need to be mindful of the budgetary impact. So that is something you can expect to see in future reports.
Yeah, that's right. And the reason I ask is because, we still have a conversation on the operational budget to come. So, if this project was to, further progress to the point where some of that is known, there would be an opportunity to, talk about funding some of that in the upcoming discussion in March. And what I would say is that when I look back from last term to this term and the supports we've been able to get from administration for committees, that's greatly improved with, a dedicated role that we have that is working in that government liaison role, supporting us in committees and getting us some briefing notes and stuff. And just wanted to say that I very much appreciate even that, but I very much appreciate that support, and it's been helpful. So thank you.
Thank you. I will just add that fortunately, this review phase, this project that I've presented to you is within our regular operating budget. So for this suite of work, we do not anticipate any increased costs. And I don't think we would see the implementation till pretty late in the year. So I think if there are budgetary impacts, it would not be reflected until we got to 2024. But my hope is that we can absorb them.
Thank you very much. A couple of questions I have. First one is, and you probably did say it in terms of Q3, you're hoping to be finished by the end of Q3. Is that's?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. My hope, and I'm pretty keen about this.
You're an optimist, we know.
Is having the review completed by Q3, and then from Q3 on, really just focusing on implementation. I have a dream of offering all our council committees a robust orientation as part of their first meeting, working with administration to help our administration support the committees effectively, helping them support the committees in the report back to council. But a lot of those things take time. You know, another thing that I'll be bringing to council for consideration is looking at a mandate process so that there's a way that council can communicate to the committees. These are the specific things we would like to get advice about in a 2-year period or a 1-year period, whatever the case may be. So those are the sorts of things that I'm thinking about and wanting to have discussions about, but they will take time to unfold.
Thank you for that. And what was going through my head, the reason I was asking that question was, so technically, we don't have a bylaw in place right now. So we're in a holding pattern until the bylaw is created. Is that it? And I imagine that's okay as long as it doesn't go on for too long. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, thank you for that, Madam Chair. You know, our state right now, we have some gaps that need to be addressed. And that's okay. We are working towards addressing them, and we will make sure that we do a good job and that we're thorough and complete. I would be afraid if we weren't doing anything about it. That's when I would be concerned. But I think we're taking the right steps. We're taking a comprehensive review and look at everything. And the bylaw is in progress and will be before committee of the whole in this quarter. And my hope is that we can make it effective for April, May. That will really set the foundation, and then it's addressing all the other pieces, but it will take some time.
And my last point before I go to the mayor has a question. Just wondering if there's going to be time built into your schedule for engagement with the committees themselves, because that would be, and I'm sure you didn't contemplate doing this without asking them, but when about would you expect that to happen?
That would likely be in phase 2. So we do have a communications plan started. And part of that plan is to do a public survey for people who have participated on council committees or may have contemplated being a part of council committees, as well as for committee members themselves. So we will be gathering that kind of data to help us develop the right processes.
So they will be involved and they'll be aware and all of that.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you for answering my questions. Mayor Daniluk?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just it's a quick question. So based on your experience, do you envision us creating a new committee that other municipalities use for various things that we don't have here in Beaumont, possibly? Is that a possibility within the scope of the work?
Yeah. So through you, Madam Chair, to the mayor. That's definitely a possibility. I think when we review the current suite of council committees, we would like to engage council in a discussion. You know, here are the committees we have, here are the mandates, here are some options for optimizing the committees we have. Are there gaps? Is there an area that council feels we would be better served to have a council committee? Being mindful of the resourcing and all of those other things, but that's absolutely on the table. That's part of this review. Sort of identifying what should we let go, what should we sunset, what could we amalgamate, what should we introduce? Those are all valid questions that we would want to ask as part of this review.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I do not see any further requests to speak. So I believe is a motion in order, Madam Clerk, to accept for information. Thank you very much. Would a member of the committee like to make that motion? Mayor Daniluk.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, we can make one. I think we could do that
can
one on
make
the
one up.
fly. I think he can figure that one out. Mayor Daniluk, would you? Yeah.
Yes.
Well done.
That's all I got. How about yes?
Members of the
Or
committee, please
so
vote.
moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. And the vote is unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you again, Madam Clerk, Madam Jaya. That was very well done, and questions were answered. I think we look forward to what you bring back to us in the next coming months. So this has been such a tough agenda. I don't know if I can handle it. You know, we're just down to council inquiries now. So any inquiries from any members of council? I don't see any. I just want to make one comment. I've been watching the progress on the derelict house that's on Highway 625. Today it was different. Again, there's different color well, they've stripped something off. I think what they've done is they've taken the siding off. CIO, do you want to just comment on that? Thank you.
I would just share the same comments that you're making. I've noticed them as they're doing the asbestos abatement. Yesterday or the day before, they were literally scraping every single tile off the outside of the building. So what they've probably done is then encapsulated that in what was blue yesterday, and I'm not sure what color it is today, but it's
It's been
quite the
brownish today.
process.
Yeah.
Yeah, orange today,
Yeah.
yeah. It's all got to be separated. So when it goes into the landfill, it goes to the right spot.
Okay.
So it's quite the
Well, it's
endeavor.
good they're being careful doing it, for sure.
Oh, for sure. Those are
Yeah.
professional abatement
They,
people,
they
yeah.
need to be. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's excellent.
But it's coming.
Yeah, progress. And the other comment, this week I sent you a picture because I saw the sign on
Oh, yes.
highway on 50th Street and 510. Yay, the
Yep.
part came in.
It's
Supply
100%
chain.
operational.
Yeah,
now.
so it's now working. And actually, I think there's some new designs. So in
Good.
the interim, there were some things that were added to. So
Oh, because I probably
thank you
couldn't.
to the administration for doing that.
Yeah, that's been a long time coming.
I do not see any other comments, so